BJ from Game Gumbo. I've got my guests here, the Beans and Dice podcast. I got Carlos and Rob and Wayne. We're talking spicy hot games. Wayne, Flashpoint Fire Rescue, yay or nay?
It's a yay for me. I think my family is big into cooperative games, so we've played a ton of them. And I think I probably like you. I probably hadn't played this in 4 or 5 years, and I own everything for it, all the expansions, and everything. But I think what spurred me in the last couple of weeks to get it back off the shelf was they just kickstarted a legacy version of Flashpoint Fire Rescue.
That's right.
So yeah, so that was really interesting. It's going to be, it'll be the Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion book kind of thing where you're opening up and you're developing firefighters over the course of like 10 or 12 or 15 different events and scenarios.
Look how prepared I am, Carlos. I mean, I got the graphic up right away.
There you go, right away. But I think so. Flashpoint Fire Rescue, you're playing firefighters, obviously. And what I think I love about this game is it comes in the base box. There's 2 different versions. There's a very family-friendly version that you can play, which is very midweight. It eliminates a lot of kind of the special things and like, chemical explosions or like, flash flyovers or things like that. And then you can play a more advanced version. So I can take this out and play with my kid who's 9 and my wife, or I could then also play with Rob and Carlos on a more sort of advanced version. And so it's basically you're trying to fight fires. There's smoke in a building, and you're trying to rescue a certain number of people before either the fire overtakes the building or there's enough damages to the structural integrity of the building where the building kind of collapses. And what I like is with all the different expansions, there are 2-story houses. There's an airplane scenario. There's like a high-rise scenario where there's elevators, so that it really brings in all the different aspects of firefighting. And I say this because I probably said this on the my father was a fireman, kind of Irish Catholic kid from New York. Big shock, comes from a family with firemen in it, right? But so it really does. All the different expansions kind of bring in a lot of stuff of like, how do you fight a fire with jet fuel? How do you fight a fire, in a building with elevators? And then the idea of going in and you're trying to rescue people. And then in further expansions, they differentiate the firefighters. You can have different types of firefighters, like a hazmat guy and someone who specializes with a dog, or someone who specializes with like a reader to find hotspots and things like that. And then even in later expansions, one of the mechanics that kind of people didn't like was how you roll for hotspots. And when the hotspots show up, you create kind of flashovers. And it's with dice and in the grid. And in later expansions, they kind of brought in an event deck where you can flip over events, and that's how it drives the fire spreading in the building that you're playing with. So I think, in the base game, there's a 3 or 4 different modules or scenarios you can play. But with all the various expansions, there are tons of boards. So you can, you've got like 10 or 15 different types of firefighters and, 10 or 15 different maps that you can create and scenarios you can play. And then you have the event decks. And now eventually you'll have a legacy game, which after you finish with legacy game, you can use aspects of all the base game there. So there's a lot of different things you can do there. And with just the base game, you can have a base game, simple game to teach your family, or a more complex game you can play with, more hardcore gamers. And then if you do like it, you can simply keep buying and adding to those expansions. So it's kind of stayed the test of time. And I busted it out and loved it, and realized I own it on Steam now, so I can go play on Steam, which is a good little way to kind of teach yourself how to play. So it's just a game that I've enjoyed, and I like to see that the legacy game is kind of reinvigorating interest in it, because I think it's a really, really fun cooperative game.
Patrick wants to know, though, who is your favorite Flashpoint role? And I'm assuming it's the Farzug Führer or the Get Far Stuff Expert.
You got to go with the Fire Dog, man, right? You got to go
Fire Dog. Okay. Has anybody else played it besides Wayne? Anybody?
Yes, we have.
I played it like 4 or 5 years ago at a meetup, one of my first meetups. I remember playing that. I don't love co-op games, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't like enough to buy a copy for myself, but I could get into it if I needed to.
Patrick says the Generalist. Anybody a fan of the Generalist? Anybody?
Yeah. If I'm correct in remembering, that's the one that you get a lot of extra action points, so you can kind of.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. I don't remember. It's been years since I played. Carlos and I, this is one of the ones that we constantly say. We played this together when he was just bringing me into gaming, probably over 10 years ago, and into board gaming. And we keep saying, why don't we ever pull that game out and play it? I own it. I don't have all the expansions like Wayne does, but it's just one of these games we just need to get back to the table. And I'm confident once we get it out, we'll probably play it over and over again. But it's been a while since I played it. I know there's one of the characters has extra movement, and I always felt movement was big in this game, kind of getting around, getting to places. I'm not sure which character that is, but that was always my favorite character.
Well, whenever we do play, we have roles. Like, you know, you play Will Baldwin, and I'm Kurt Russell. Wait a minute. That's the 1991 movie Backdraft.
When I did play this with my family last week, I did have the Backdraft soundtrack on.
Nice.
You got to have theme music, right?